Today I'm going to talk about how to avoid digital PR flops. So it happens to all of us. We put a load of time, money, and energy into a digital PR campaign and it gets 0 links. We then start to question whether we can actually do digital PR. Like, is it worth it at all? Is it just, are the people doing it well, just better than us, or are they just lying? We give up on the whole thing and we go back to just spamming people to get links. Now, I think a big reason why campaigns flop is people are too ambitious. They want to create like a breaking news story, and that is just really difficult. Journalists, we're not journalists at the end of the day. Like, they do this day in, day out. They know how to break stories. They know how to make stories. They have connections in the right places. So we sort of need to play the percentages a bit more. So when I'm coming up with PR ideas, I always want to maximize potential journalist targets. So I found that if I pitch a story that is relevant to a journalist beat, so what a journalist regularly writes about, then it has around a 2% chance of getting published. So in other words, for every 50 relevant journalists that I pitch, I get a link. So with my ideation, I want to come up with an idea that's as relevant to as many journalists as possible. And there are 3 ways that I like to maximize this relevance, this journalist relevance. So the first of these is something that's talked about a lot about, and it's creating a story that has a national and a local angle. So if a story has an angle that's relevant to a country as a whole, and angles that are relevant to specific parts of the country, then you can get potentially featured in both national and local outlets with the same story. So here's an example of how the minimum wage going up in the UK can have both a national and local angle. National angle, we've got the UK Sun, which is the national newspaper. Pay rise for minimums as national living wage is set to go up by £12.10 per hour. The same story with the same data can be pitched, can be spliced up city by city. And then we've got the story, nearly 45,000 Birmingham workers set to get pay boost on this day. So it's the same story, essentially. One of them is about how it affects the country as a whole. One of it is how it affects a city. So you can pitch national journalists, you can pitch local journalists. And this, 10x is the number of journalists that are relevant. So 10x is the number of links you can get. So yeah, look for stories with a national and a local angle. This is why government data sets are so popular in PR, because they often will give you a national figure and a localized figure. So you pitch the national figure to the national journalist, the local figure to the local journalist, and you get more links. So yeah, but to be fair, everyone knows this and everyone does this. This is something that I see being done a bit less, but that I think people should focus on more, and that's making your story relevant to typical beats. So journalists tend to write about the same specific topics over and over again. Well, you can come up with ideas that are so relevant to a current event and that are just so viral that journalists have to cover it. This is difficult. So you can hedge your bets by making stories that are relevant to journalists' typical beats. The best way to analyze journalists' most common beats is to look at their job titles. They often have their beat in their job title. And if you do journalist prospecting over and over again, you'll see this come up. I was thinking of doing a data piece around this, but I couldn't be bothered. So I just ended up asking ChatGPT the following question. Can you please give me the most common job titles for journalists with particular reference to what they cover, i.e. breaking news reporter or trends reporter? And this is what it gave me. So breaking news reporter, general assignment reporter, news anchor. These are the ones that you want to look at. Politics reporter, business reporter, tech reporter, health reporter, science reporter, education reporter, crime and justice reporter, a bit less relevant. And then you've got trends reporter, entertainment reporter, sports reporter, lifestyle reporter, and then a few other ones that are a bit less relevant. Now, I know ChatGPT can often chat SHIT, but the output that gave me here actually correlates really well with what I've seen doing prospecting. And at this point in time, I've done a lot of journalist prospecting. And this is particularly true for the US media. So you can sort of reverse engineer stories to make them relevant to journalists if you bridge your stories to politics, consumer finance. Now, consumer finance covers business, but it also just covers rich people. So I put in Google News, in title billionaires, set Google News to last week, and look how many stories there are. Like, it just goes on and on and on and on and on. Like, rich people. You can find any data or just anything about rich people like that. There are journalists who all they write about is rich people. So personal finance, so like saving and making money, and health, environment, education, celebrities, food, travel, sex and relationships, inequality, technology, property. If you look at PR campaign databases, now this is JournoFinder's one, but there are loads of those out there. And if they have a column to do with niche, which I know that JournoFinder does, here we go, niche, and you look at the niches that they do, and you just look at these niches, these kind of map on to the journalist beats, and that's not a coincidence. Some of these are like for example, like Cohere is a subsection of personal finance. Digital nomads is a subsection of like personal finance, consumer finance. Security and privacy is a subsection of tech. Food and drink is a subsection of lifestyle. Law is a subsection of politics. You know, the niches that come up over and over again in there are essentially these, and there's a reason for that. You want to reverse engineer it to make it so that there's as many relevant journalists as possible to your story. Like, this isn't any different from any other type of link building. It is just a numbers game, right? So I see a lot of people, they want to create like the most viral story, and they're trying to target breaking news and feature reporters by making like really cutting edge news. And that's where you see a lot of flops. You're much, I think anyway, that you're much better off hedging your bets by making it to one of these things and then just targeting reporters who write about that. You know, you're probably not going to get like 100 link campaign, but your chances of getting a 5 to 10 or 10 to 20 link campaign goes much, much higher. And your chances of getting a 0 link campaign gets much lower. And that's what we're aiming for. And the final way that I sort of hedge my bets to make sure that I don't flop is to create original data that supports commonly held views. This is kind of a complex idea, so I want to cash this out a little bit. If your story supports a wider narrative that people already believe or want to believe, then you can get away with less meticulous data than if you're trying to publish something controversial. People often think you have to publish something super controversial or super against the grain to get links. And while this is true, and a lot of the campaigns that go super, super viral, that like PR agencies post as their case study and try and make out they do this week in, week out, which they don't, often is something like really controversial or really like just out there. But a story that reinforces what people already think gives you the best chance of landing some links. In psychology, there's this concept called cognitive dissonance, that we don't want to think two opposing thoughts at the same time, and that we naturally gravitate towards evidence that supports pre-held thoughts. You kind of want to play into this idea and give journalists original data that supports a commonly held view. So here's some examples of some commonly held views that PR campaigns have piggybacked off, right? So teachers, nurses, care workers don't get paid enough. So here, it was a piece about which state has the lowest paid teachers, just like an interactive map campaign. And it got 1,400 referring domains. Everyone is addicted to their phone, you know, like no one will disagree with this. So here we got a case study about a week in the life of a young person's smartphone use. Look how many referring domains it got. No one has any privacy anymore, right? This campaign on the most invasive apps, a load of referring domains. The price of everything is going up. Again, everyone will agree with this. It's true, isn't it? So an example of this is the McCheapest price of a Big Mac map. Ooh, wrong button. And again, a load of domains. The final one is our employers treat us bad. You know, everyone hates their boss. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people do. And this was just comparing the commute times in different cities, and there, load of links. All these campaigns have this concept in common, that it's original data to support commonly held views. So again, if we pitch something that goes against the commonly held wisdom, journalists are already going to have their guard up. They're like, ooh, like this is controversial, like is this actually true? And then they'll go digging into the veracity of the data. And, you know, PRs who aren't like professional data journalists, the data might be a little bit iffy, but if you create data that goes with the grain of what people already think, then journalists are going to publish it without as much question. So the key is to create a piece of data that encapsulates a well-known sentiment as well as succinctly as possible. The added bonus is that if you've created a statistic or a piece of data that feeds into something that people believe a lot, people write about a lot, people talk about a lot, then it's got a chance of getting written about over and over and over again. And that's what you want. That you want data that's going to get used over and over again, that lends itself to loads and loads of different stories. And that's how you get this compounding link effect. So just to sum up how I go about ideation to avoid flops, is make your story as relevant to as many journalists as possible. And I always think, for every 50 relevant journalists that I can find, that's one link. Increase the spread of your relevance by creating local and national angles. So you can add national journalists and local journalists to your prospecting list. Bridge your idea to common journalistic beats. So again, you find this by looking at the subsections of newspapers or looking at journalist job titles and seeing what comes up over and over and over and over again. That's what you want to create content about. And if you can, go with the grain of public sentiment rather than against it. Unless you have a really groundbreaking methodology, which usually involves spending a load of money. If you want to do like little DIY data studies where the data isn't, you know, a data scientist would be like, you know, what the fuck is this? Then you can sort of overcome poor data by going with the grain of public opinion. But again, you got to balance that with not being boring. So again, original, succinct data to support a commonly publicly held view. And yeah, that's how you minimize flop risk with digital PR. So if you enjoyed that video, you learned something, and you'd like to work with me, you can go to my website at olliebaysdigital.com or just Google Ollie Bays Digital, which is the name of this channel, and you will find me and you can find out more about me there, make an inquiry. If you want to just straight up email me, my email address is ollie, O-L-I, at olliebaysdigital.com. And if you just like the video but you don't really want to speak to me, fair enough, but please like, comment and subscribe.